Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On this episode of Conversations with Big Rich, I'll be speaking with Mark Jensen. Mark is the owner of Off-Road Innovations. That's right, the designer and creator of ORI shocks. Hello, Mark Jensen. It's really good to have you here today and on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Hello, Rich. Yes, I think this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, have you ever done a podcast before?
No.
Okay.
No, I have listened to a few, but I have not participated in a podcast.
Well, here you go. So, first question, the easiest question for most people to answer. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in eastern Utah, Roosevelt.
Okay, up there on the Vernal, up there by Vernal and Deschutes, or
Yes.
however you say it. Yep.
Actually, my father had a 40-acre cattle ranch in Toelle, which is north of Roosevelt, up by Vernal.
Okay.
Sold the cattle ranch when I was an infant, 9 months old, I believe. And the family moved to a little town in California, Cottonwood, where we started raising sheep. That didn't work out, so my father got a job at a lumber mill. This is in Northern California, up by Redding.
Right.
So I was raised in Anderson, California, close to Redding. Lived there until I was 12. At that time, my father was looking for work again and came back to Utah. He moved a few years ahead of the family, actually jumping rail cars to get here.
Wow.
And hitchhiked and jumped rail cars to get to Utah looking for work, and found work in Toelle, Utah.
Okay.
So in 1966, the rest of us joined with my father in Toelle, Utah, moved here and lived here for about 30 years until, well, I managed to get a job in machining. I was doing some motorcycle mechanics right out of high school, and that migrated into doing machining work for a company in Salt Lake City, at which time that was for a few years. We spent a total of 30 years in Utah after moving from California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Recruited. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was say those early years, you were approximately, 6 or 7 when you left NorCal for back to Toelle?
I was 12.
12, okay. What was,
I was 12 when we left.
Was there a culture
Yes, right.
shock going from Anderson, California to Toelle? I would imagine at that time they were probably about the same size.
I lived in the mountains with redwood trees and foliage everywhere. Coming to Toelle, Utah, it was like being dropped off in the middle of the desert,
That's true.
left for dead.
Because you could, in Toelle, if you're up high enough, you can look out over the Salt Lake, and it's pretty vast.
Yes, it's pretty vast, but I wasn't impressed with the lake. I was mostly overwhelmed with, like you say, the culture shock of being dropped off in the middle of the desert.
Right.
And I really missed my trees. And of course, we have mountains here. I had to find completely new things to entertain myself. In California, I had two older brothers and a younger sister, and an older sister. We did some crazy things in California. Of course, in California, you know that a lot of things are outlawed, like fireworks and model rockets. So we improvised. We would build cannons out of pipes. Today, I think they're called pipe bombs. And we would grind up match heads and launch one of those giant crayons out of cannons down the street. And it turned out to be quite the ballistics exercise. My older brother tried to lure me into building a submarine. We had a little lake close to the house. I considered my older brother, who later became an architect, kind of a little bit loony in some of the ideas. I was envisioning getting into this submarine with my brother, and I said, "There's just no way I'm doing this. I'm going to end up dead." So the designing and building things was in the family blood. My older brother became a machinist and maintenance man. My oldest brother, second older brother that wanted to do the submarine, ended up becoming an architect. And I stayed in the engineering field.
And did it work out for everybody?
Yes, everybody went on to be quite successful. Everybody's retired except for me.
But that's because you're self-employed. We never fully retire.
Right. Well, my official retirement date was in 2015.
Right.
2015 for my day job. I was recruited. I was working as a machinist here in Salt Lake City and manufacturing engineer. I started school at age 40, which was quite late.
Wow.
I was going to go to the University of Utah, didn't have the funds to do that. So I was started school at Salt Lake Community College, wanted to get into engineering. Before I could finish, I was confronted by a headhunter and recruited for a manufacturing engineering job in Georgia, working for a company, Yokogawa Corporation, who build field instruments for the oil and gas industry. In 1996, we accepted that job and moved our family from here to Georgia, a little town of Sharpsburg.
Okay. And your job there was producing or engineering the equipment?
The purpose of the recruiting was they were setting up a manufacturing line for differential pressure transmitters. And this has a little bit to do with the history of the struts. We never did introduce what company I represent, Soft Road Innovation, ORI struts. I was recruited to help set up the manufacturing for the differential pressure transmitter. And this is used at oil refineries and offshore rigs to measure the level of the crude oil tanks based on atmospheric pressure compared to the weight of the fluid in the tank.
Okay.
There you can see then why we call it a differential pressure transmitter.
Right.
So I set up the manufacturing line for that, along with one of their programmer engineer. It was quite an experience because working here in Utah as a manufacturing engineer, I was quite accustomed to getting things done very quickly. In Georgia, the business atmosphere was a lot of meetings, and the big corporate atmosphere, a lot of meetings and planning and more meetings and more planning. It was frustrating for me because I just couldn't understand it. Why can't we just do it and get it done? So it took us more than a year to get this line set up, following all the guidelines, but we did finally get that done. Also involved in, I was over the entire manufacturing operation in Georgia for Yokogawa. We also built vortex and magnetic flow meters for the oil and gas industry. So that's kind of my engineering background. While there, I continued my education at Southern Tech University up in Marietta, Georgia. So that's kind of my engineering background. I was promoted to mechanical engineer and then senior mechanical engineer. Then, unfortunately for me, the quality manager retired, a good friend of mine, and my boss said, "Well, you're going to be the new quality manager, and there's no pay raise that goes along with it. You're just going to be the new quality manager." So that started the more boring part of my career, but it gave me an incredibly good background in the management of a business. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. It was a great kickstart for the ORI strut business, because now I had management experience and manufacturing and machining and programming experience, and the quality side of things, ISO 9000, and so on.
Okay.
So without that, I don't know how this business could have ever gotten off the ground and survived as it has.
Right. How did you get involved with from the engineering job to ORI, Off-Road Innovations, which is of course the strut manufacturer, but there's some background in there that's got to be, from your youth or something. You just didn't jump in from the oil industry and decide to make off-road shocks or struts.
Well, now we have to back up again.
Okay, let's do
that.
Go
back to 1984.
All right.
While we were still living here in Utah, my oldest brother got me involved with motorcycles. So we would spend a lot of time on motorcycles. And while working as a machinist here in Salt Lake City, we decided to build a go-kart. From old Honda crates. They came in metal crates. We built this go-kart and had some fun with it. And from that, it went to building a sandrail. But I was quite interested in four-wheel drive. So we built what was very, what would you call it? Outside the box, a sandrail that was four-wheel drive. And it was actually, I would say, the first side-by-side. It was a two-seater, rear engine, four-wheel independent, full-time four-wheel drive, built with a Honda CB 1100 engine. And I built my own transfer case, built my own gears, did everything from the ground up. And that was featured in Dirt Sports magazine back in 1987, I believe it was. We built that, and it became, anyway, we'd go to the dunes often, and my wife and I were at the north end of the St. Anthony sand dunes. And we were side hilling this long, long ridge, along with a convoy of larger sandrails, along with the one that we had built. And it's quite scary, actually, being off camber like that, thinking we're going to roll down the hill. And I said to my wife, somebody needs to build a more stable suspension system for these hills like this. And she says, well, who would that be? Maybe you should.
Right.
So at that point, we decided, well, okay, we're going to work on a shock absorber that will be more stable. So at that point, we started working on a design. I was working with a rotary valve design, something that would be a hill sensing shock absorber where the spring rate would stiffen on the downhill side and stay loose on the uphill side and automatically change. Well, so that kind of leads into my work with Yokogawa in Georgia, where we built the differential pressure transmitters. And that's inspired by the idea of how they were using these different pressures to measure fluid level in a tank. I got to thinking, well, maybe I could build a shock absorber, and ended up, we call it a strut, that will automatically change spring rate without any external inputs. So it all happened internally, and I used the concept of differential pressures internally in the shock absorber to actuate valves. And the concept worked. we patented it, and I think in 2002 we received a patent on the hill sensing strut. We took the strut to Chandler, Arizona, to our first trade show, probably our only trade show that we ever did. Demonstrated it there on a test stand so people could see how this strut, when you lean it one direction, it would stiffen the spring rate. You stand it back up vertical and would soften up again. Actually, at that time, one of the representatives from Fox came over to our booth, and he was looking at what we were doing. He says, "No, that's impossible. You can't change spring rates automatically without some kind of an external input." And then the use of urethane, yeah, yes, and the use of urethane seals, he says, that will never work. The seals just won't hold up for what you're doing. Well, we'll get into that a little more later, I think, because we did end up having an awful lot of failures with the first design struts. But we did that first trade show. This is in Arizona, and we picked up 2 dealers. I don't know if I should name them.
You can if you wish.
Well, maybe I'll do that. We picked up Troy Vickery with Toys by Troy, who
Okay.
was in Phoenix,
I remember him.
and Todd Little with On Track 4x4
In St.
St.
George.
Utah.
Yep.
So Todd, Jen, Little in the beginning, well, they wanted to become dealers, but they also wanted to be sponsored. We did that. Jen was the driver of an old flat fender Willys. And they rock crawled super crawl with U-Rock. And the U-Rock changed hands a number of times.
Yes.
Ownership during those years. And we would fly out for super crawl every year. We experienced an awful lot of failures. I'll tell you that. We had the hill sensing strut working great. That was working. But what we didn't account on, and that's my fault as the engineer, what we didn't count on is the uphill side would unload. So I can't tell you how many times I received phone calls from Todd who would say, "Mark, these things are acting weird." So it was one super call event where I saw them up on the side hill on top of a very, very steep ledge, and she started unloading, and I just put my hand over my eyes, and I thought, "Oh, no, this can't be happening." She didn't roll it, but it was a very sketchy situation.
Right.
At that time, I decided, okay, I need to do something about the unloading. So we took the DP3 design and we incorporated a dual chamber design where we could pressurize a lower chamber. We sealed the piston. It was no longer a flow-through piston, as you see with typical shocks. We sealed the piston so we could pressurize a lower chamber to force the piston shaft up. The more we would pressurize the lower chamber, the more it would pull the shaft in. And then the upper chamber is pressurized to achieve ride height. Now that worked out quite well for us. The problem with, however, the problem with the DP3 strut, and the DP3, by the way, DP is differential pressure.
Right. Okay.
And the 3 was the 3 modes. Worked as a shock absorber, a strut to support weight, and I don't remember what the other one was. Doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
DP3. And we, stabilizer, sway bar.
Okay.
So that was the 3rd. So the tech support issues with the DP3, we started selling these things, and it was just constant phone calls all the time, how to calibrate them for the different angles that the customers would mount them. It just became a nightmare. I finally abandoned the DP3 production, and we started with the ST model strut, which is a simpler model of what you see out there today. There are quite a few people with We-Rock are running them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're quite popular in the off-road world now. The ST model developed into the STX model later. We had some issues in the beginning. As a matter of history, just a little bit of background on this. while I was working as an engineer for Yokogawa for many years, from 1996 to 2015, I was pretty much out of the off-road world. I was so busy and caught up with my career that we would seldom go out and ride the motorcycles. I just didn't have the time for that, concentrating on my career. So I was oblivious to what was happening in the off-road industry. Uh, I I developed this strut, and I contacted a magazine about it and wanted to get it introduced to the market. And the person I contacted was Nick Kappa. I don't remember which magazine he was. It's one of the Jeep 4x4 magazines.
Right.
And when he looked at the product and the pictures that I sent him, he says, this would be more suited for the rock crawling world. And I said, the what? What's rock crawling? I like I said, I was oblivious. I had been outside of this world, and it had been foreign to me. And I didn't know what rock crawling was. I pictured people climbing rocks, but they're doing it in Jeeps. Okay, well, that sounds dangerous. I don't know that I'd want to do that. So
Hence why I became a
anyway,
promoter and not a driver.
exactly. So I was a little bit naive to what was going on in the sport. And I told him I had developed it for the sandrails. That was my background, motorcycles and sandrails. He said, this sounds like it'd be more for rock crawling. So I thought, okay, fine, we'll sell them to rock crawlers if that's what they want. And of course, Todd and Jen, the struts were acting a little weird for them, like I was saying. And things were going quite well for quite some time. We were dealing with issues of the struts getting hot. We had internal seal failures. We had a number of problems like that. Then I started getting these phone calls from customers who had bought these and they were racing with them. And I'm thinking, no, I didn't intend these to be raced. This is a sport shock. This is just for sport. I was thinking sand dunes and now rock crawling. I started getting phone calls from customers saying, my struts are locking up. We're having all kinds of problems. I says, well, what are you doing with them? Well, we're racing on them at KOH. And so I asked, what's KOH? So right back to being naive, I didn't know what King of the Hammers was. So people were taking our struts out to King of the Hammers, racing them. And I had internal parts that were made of plastic. And you can imagine what's going to happen to a plastic part in the heat of the desert, especially at Moab. So we were having seal failures and plastic parts twisting up and melting into odd shapes. Once again, I was caught off guard. The struts being used for things I hadn't imagined. So we had to fight through that. And I was looking last night at a quote from Steve Jobs. We talk about failures of a product. Steve Jobs, I like this. He said, embrace failure as part of the journey. Embrace failure as part of the journey. Failure is not the end. It's a step on the path to success. Learn from it, adapt, and keep moving forward. So I was kind of inspired by that. I thought, really developing any product, if you don't accept the failures that you have and learn from those and improve, you'll never see a successful end to what you're trying to do.
Especially when you're doing something that's completely out of the box. I mean, what you designed was not typical shock technology, just like the guy from Fox said. So of course he didn't think it would work.
Yeah, exactly right. We were told on the engineering side, Fox said it can't work, won't work. On the business side, we had friends that were bankers. Said, there's no way you're going to make this business get off the ground. You just can't do it with your own money. You need to get investors and venture capitalists involved. So we were told on the business side we couldn't do it. We were told on the engineering side we couldn't do it. And then that'll make it even tougher. And this is another, if you don't mind me quoting Steve Jobs again.
No, absolutely not.
We were starting this business right after 2001. We resurrected the idea of building the strut after moving to Georgia. And when the towers were hit in 2001, we thought we're going to finish developing this strut and get a business made out of it. By this time, I had 7 children. So we're raising 7 kids. I'm working a full-time job. And we're starting this business in our basement. I think that's what got you clued into what was going on here. There was an article on our Facebook about how we started this business in our basement.
Right.
With our own money, with no investors, raising 7 kids. This is what Steve Jobs had to say about that. If you've got a family and you're in the early days of a company, I can't imagine how one could do it. I'm sure it's been done, but it's rough. It's pretty much an 18-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week for a while. Unless you have a lot of passion about this, you're not going to survive. You're going to give it up, and unquote. So
I can relate to that.
yeah, you've been down that road too.
Yeah. I mean, look how many off-road event promoters there were in rock crawling. You know, at one time there was like 7 of us across the United States. And that's not the case any longer. I keep telling people I don't know if I was smart or stupid.
And your rock crawling sport, which caught me by surprise, as I mentioned, turned into rock racing.
Yep.
Remember the side-by-side rock racing?
Oh, absolutely.
And every time this rock crawling thing would evolve into something more and more violent, it meant more failures for me. But it's turned out for the best. You know, we spent the first 10 years of our business, and I think our banker friends were pretty much right. You just can't do it on your own money. We spent the first 10 years living off my wages at Yokogawa, and we made no money for 10 years. Most businesses turn a profit after about the first 5 years. We had applied for a business loan and got turned down. We had great numbers on the chart. You know, we showed them our business plan. Everything looked great. We said, look, we've tripled our business over last year. Well, we had sold maybe, what was it, 5 struts the first year or 6 struts the first year. And then we sold maybe 18 the next year. Well, that's tripled your business, right?
Right.
I don't think the banker was too impressed with the simple tripling of your business, but I thought it was pretty neat, you know.
They don't mind that when you're in the millions.
No. So today we're limited only, like I said, by our manufacturing capacity. We're selling over 2,000 struts a year currently, which is it's nothing compared to Fox and King, Radflow, and a lot of our competition. And then what they're doing, you know, Fox, of course, supplies a lot of the side by sides, and
right.
They've become quite a global company. So I thought tripling our business was a neat thing, but the banker, like I said, was not impressed at all. And we did not get the small business loan. We mortgaged our home. I got a $50,000 loan. Our original intent was we were just going to outsource the parts and have other machine shops make our parts for us, and we would assemble them in the basement of our home. We took out a $50,000 mortgage. We bought a few manual machines, assembly equipment, and contracted a company in Tennessee to make our parts for us. But this quickly turned out to be, well, it got us our first production run, but we had all kinds of defects in the parts and late deliveries because we were such a small production run quantity that we would not, we didn't have the leverage with a machine shop to put us at top priority and get our parts on time and good quality. We quickly realized we'd have to move manufacturing into our own homes. So we started machining these struts on manual equipment in my basement. And we did this for a few years. I had a friend of mine at my day job, Yokogawa, who helped me set up the pressure transmitter line. And he agreed to move a couple of CNC machines into his garage. He lived about an hour away from us. I did the assembly and he did the machining. He took over the machining rather, but where I was doing it all on manual equipment. So now we have this combination, assembly being done in my basement, and the machining being done in his garage an hour away. And this was hard to deal with. We were doing this under a business license that did not allow us to hire people outside. So as soon as the business and the sales got to the point that we needed to start hiring people to do the work, at that point we started looking for a permanent location, a factory. Fortunately for us, but unfortunate for Carlisle Tire and Wheel, their factory burned down in Bowden, Georgia. Their entire rubber plant, they made tires for a lot of agriculture and vehicles like that. Their rubber plant burned down. Their machine shop, which is a tool and die shop across the street, was intact. They moved to Jackson, Tennessee, and sold their shop. We bought it from them, I think, in 2010. We bought their shop and converted it into ORI's manufacturing facility. And we're still there today.
Nice. Some technical questions. I remember when your shocks first came out, because Todd competed at our Cal Rock events and then We Rock when we changed the name and went more U.S. based instead of just the West Coast. I remember those unloading. It would the shocks would hold great, and then all of a sudden they weren't. And those were those early years we trying to get that valving correct and figuring it out. And you seemed to get the handle on that. And then the rock racing came along, and like you said, the guys would load up, they would lock up. They got to where they just became more like a 2x4, is what it was explained to me. And you guys have cured that. Do you have an application for street vehicles? I mean, can they be used, like on a highway vehicle?
Well, we tell people today the same thing we told them way back when. They do not have Department of Transportation DOT approval. So we tell them, if you drive them on the street, you're on their own. They don't have DOT approval. These are made for off-road use only.
Okay.
However, you're going to see these on a lot of Jeeps and trucks on the highway.
They drive to and from. Yeah.
Yes, they use them as, what you call it, that's another term I had to learn, a daily driver. So people do mount these on their Jeeps and trucks and some cars. And they become daily drivers, although we don't stand behind them because our philosophy here is that, not being DOT approved, anytime you change from the factory setup, you no longer have the safety protocols required by the federal government, Department of Transportation. Our struts are designed to be long travel for rock crawling and for racing, whereas an automobile suspension, you might have 3-4 inches of travel.
Correct.
And when you put long suspension on a highway vehicle, you're introducing some instability. Of course, they will run with sway bars and things like that to help out.
Okay.
But I think I answered your question.
Yes, you did. You did.
Except for the 2x4 thing. You're not supposed to bring that up, Rich.
Sorry.
Yeah, they would ride like on a 2x4 or like a rigid suspension. What do they call that? A hardtail on a Harley.
Yep.
And what would happen is like I said, at one point we changed to a dual chamber design where we're sealing the upper chamber from the lower chamber. The challenge with that was that we had to have a perfect seal between the two chambers, which is almost impossible to achieve in hydraulics. Even with forklift hydraulics and other hydraulics you see construction equipment, there is some leakage, and it's a compensated for, it's just recycled through the system. But if our struts had any leakage at all, the upper chamber oil would leak into the lower chamber and it would lock it up. And there's no recovery because we don't have this constant loop of recycling the oil and refreshing the upper chamber and so forth. So leaks internally are just not allowed with our struts. The problems we had to overcome were getting a seal and oil combination where the oil would not attack and deteriorate the seals. In fact, the material we finally ended up with for our seals that we don't advertise where we get it from or what the material is, didn't actually exist until about 2019.
Wow.
So we've always used urethane seals because urethane can handle the pressures that we were seeing. A regular rubber seal and nitrile seal would not do it. So we always had to use the urethane. This is one of the criticism Fox had for us, you recall from the earlier in the conversation. It won't work because urethane will not work. Urethane is susceptible to moisture and water. It'll break down. And most grades of urethane just couldn't handle constant exposure to certain oils. We did some laboratory testing, finally came up with a oil and a seal material combination where the seals would last for several years without experiencing any deterioration and leaking. We also had a problem with the O-ring design. We had to move the O-ring internally from one place in the strut to another location within the strut and install it instead of being a typical O-ring seal, but to become a packing under high pressure. So we finally overcame the internal leak issues where the struts would lock up and, as you say, act like they were a 2x4, just a one solid strut. Once we overcame that, I think a lot of those phone calls subsided and life was a lot better after that, after fixing the internal leak issue. This is something that, so Fox was right. It will not work with what they were seeing, and we did have problems.
But you've been able to overcome those.
That we were able to overcome it. I think just like Steve Jobs once again says, what did he say? It was like perfect perseverance is another thing Steve Jobs. And I keep coming back to Steve Jobs, but he's kind of an inspiring type of guy.
Absolutely.
And he said those two words, perfect perseverance, and just dedication to what you're doing. Eventually, you'll overcome some the problems you're having. And we did. We overcame it. And, a lot of that motivation comes from we're trying to feed 7 kids. and in 2015, I had retired from my day job. And my wife kept pestering me, says, now you got to quit your day job and go full-time ORI. You'll make more money with ORI than working for Yokogawa. So finally I retired in 2015. And now the burden was, this has to work because this is our only means of support now.
Option. Failure is not an option.
That's right. And you've done business, you know how that goes.
Yes.
So survival is a great motivator.
It certainly is. It certainly is. After 25 years of rock crawling, I can tell you that.
Yes. Pride got the best of me, and this is an interesting story. I told my boss at my day job, and says, okay, I'm going to retire and do my business full time. He got quiet and he looked at me straight in the eye and he very, very serious look on his face. He says, Mark, can I convince you to stay on just another 6 months? Well, that's when pride kicked in. And I said, oh, no. My business is such a success and we're going to do this full time and this is going to be a great thing. So no, I have to retire. I'm retiring. I'm hanging it up. He says, are you real sure I can't convince you to stay on another 6 months? I says, no. I'm going to do my business. He says, well, okay. And we did that. I retired. We had our party, all the hugs and kisses and the cake, did their celebration. 3 months later, Yokogawa offered a half a year's pay to anybody that was willing to take an early retirement.
Wow. Very good.
And I was making six figures at the time, so
It would have been nice to stick around to get that bonus, huh?
yeah, that would have been a nice kickstart to that business. But yeah, when the boss looks you straight in the eye and he's got that somber look on his face, pay attention. They're
Right.
trying to tell you something.
Something that might be in the wind.
Exactly. But yeah, that it still worked out because, actually my wife was right, and she's sitting here with me, Marie.
Right.
She's been the love of my life, and she took over and did the books from the very get-go in the business. When she saw us trying to run a business off of a spreadsheet, she said, we've got to fix this. And so she took over the books and helped with the shipping and receiving and a lot of the phone calls. She's taking all these phone calls while I was working simultaneously my day job. She's trying to handle all the tech support calls from home. You can imagine how that worked. So during my break time at work, I'd be calling customers back.
No, but I can understand the your partner, your wife, wanting to take the reins for part of the business. Shelley and did that when I met Shelley in 2009. I was getting ready to lock the doors on We Rock and just stop. I mean, I'd had it at that point. The economy was, sucked really bad, and we'd lost a lot of our drivers because they were being affected as well. And I was ready to give up, and Shelley just said, "Hey, let me help you on this, on the office end of it." And I was like, "You really don't want to put your hands into this mess." And she said, "No, let me do it," because she had retired from her job. So it was like, okay, handed it over to her. She, we cut costs and, shoestringed it for a while and, built it back up. And so, having that help is essential, especially for a family business.
Well, you and I can really relate.
Yep.
Because both of us, our wives, kind of bailed out the situation and made it bearable to where it could continue forward.
Yeah, because when you're trying to do it all yourself at times, it just gets to the point where you just like, I just can't do it anymore. It's just too much for one person.
So I'll share a personal thing with you. We went through those years of struggle, and like you said, you wanted to hang it up. There were many, many times I wanted to hang up. And I'm a Christian man, and I'm prayerful. And oftentimes I get down on my knees and I'd pray, Lord, I'm not really hooked on this business. And if there's any way I can get out of it, just say the word, I'll hang it up and get out of it right now. So a number of times I prayed, like, if you want me out of this business and just go back to punching the time clock, I'll do it right now. But we kept moving forward. And I think our wives kind of kept us moving in that direction.
True.
But like I said, there were times I wanted to just give it up and quit. And like Steve Jobs said, if you're raising a family and trying to start a business at the same time, you just want to, chances are you're going to give it up.
Yep.
But there's a few of us that just pushed forward and kept doing it.
Yeah, like I said, for myself, I didn't know if over all these years I was stupid or if I was smart. I think there's a fine line in, which it is.
Yeah, I've seen that fine line. I think, I've broken that barrier a few times.
Right. So your family is involved with the business as well, besides your wife?
Yes, my sons helped us build those first struts in our basement. We used the bathtub in our master bathroom as a leak test tank. We would rush boxes of struts upstairs, downstairs between leak tests, and we would heat treat the plastic bypass tubes in our oven We were stress relieving the plastic tubes, the ones that melted at KOH and Moab. Yeah, we would do the stress relieving in our oven.
Washing the dishwasher.
We would wash the parts in our dishwasher, send them out for anodize. So I tell you, we were using at least 2 levels of our home for strut manufacturing and testing and assembly.
And housing of employees.
And that, like, yeah, your question was our family getting involved. Our sons did help us do a lot of that assembly in the beginning. Kirk and Russell and Eric, my 3 sons, even Nolan, who, yeah, so there's 4 of them. Nolan, Eric, Russell, and Kirk all worked with us on these struts.
Andrew never did really.
Andrew's the youngest one. He was the one that was born in Georgia. He took a different tact. He went into accounting. He just got his graduate degree in accounting just this year.
Very good.
But the other boys, Kirk, from the very beginning, has been my tech support. He and Russell started their own business, Jensen Brothers Off-Road in Salt Lake City. So they have a brick and mortar business in Salt Lake now, and Kirk still does tech support for us. So he's paid to do that. He's an actual employee of the company, aside from doing his own business. One day, let's see, I just turned 70 this week.
Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I don't know, is 70 happy? I don't know.
You have to look in the mirror and answer that one yourself.
I am still walking under my own power. I'm still vertical, as they say. So we're doing good.
Perfect.
Now, one thing I didn't mention, and the whole course of this, is that what year was it? About 2019. We kept hearing from our customers. We were using our customers as guinea pigs to test these struts. In 2015, but we bought a Polaris Razor and used that for testing. We had a 99 Jeep TJ we also used with the original DP3 struts for testing. But by and large, we were using our customers to test out improvements and design changes. We were finally encouraged by one of the Ultra 4 racers that we sponsored to buy our own race car. He said, you will learn a lot more owning your own race car than having your customers test your product. So we did. We bought from Let's Roll Off-Road in Mesa, Arizona, Andrew McLaughlin. We bought his Ultra 4 car.
Oh, the IFS car? Was it the IFS or the straight axle car?
We bought the IFS car.
Okay.
Yes, we bought his Ultra 4 Unlimited Class 4400 car.
The Rock Crusher.
So we didn't start out small. We decided to go right out and go for broke. Bought his car. We tore it down, made a lot of improvements to it, put our struts on it. By the way, we took off the ADS shocks, weighed them, and put our struts on, and actually dropped the weight of the car 230 pounds.
Wow. By
going to the struts. Because the ADS are quite advanced. They're very good shocks. It's one of the go-to shocks for off-road racing. And we put our struts on the car and we started testing our own, doing the races. We went to King of Hammers. The third year that we raced, 2024, which was just this year. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we're still 2024.
Yes.
I'm losing track of time. We finished Hammers, 39th position out of 40 finishers. 117 people started and only 40 finished. We were number 39. So that was quite a success. We've done a number of fast short course races with our car, and learned that it was quite unpopular with our customers when the struts coming off of a big jump land hard, blows the seals, the oil sprays on the engine, and the struts catch fire. So that's something that most of our customers just don't like.
Well, I can imagine that.
So, yeah, struts that blow up and catch fire, that was not a good marketing point. So So we fixed that. In fact, we have a new version of the strut we're calling Generation 3 that doesn't blow up and catch fire.
Gen 3.
Gen 3.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm flying to Georgia this afternoon to assemble the first ones, oversee the assembly of the first ones, and they're going on a race car, and they'll go into the next race. Now, we're the only ones that exploded them and caught fire. None of our customers had that issue, but because we're testing them and we put them through some really severe use.
Well, then buying the race car was a great idea.
It was. It really was. It was a good thing to do. Not cheap.
No?
You need to pass this along to your customers, Rich. If they plan to make money racing, they're smoking something.
Right? No, that's true. The old adage is, how to make $1 million in racing. Start with 2.
Yeah. Start out as a billionaire. Right.
Yep, exactly. But as a test bed, I can imagine that it's the way to go because, the feedback for the engineer in yourself is better than getting it secondhand.
Well, that's true. The reports you get back from your customers are, well, the struts failed. Well, what were you doing? Well, what happened? Do you have video? The feedback is best when you're experiencing it yourself.
Exactly.
So we're learning a lot from the car. And the other thing that's really good, when you use your own product and you're testing your own product, and especially if you get into racing, now you with rock crawling and us with both rock crawling and Ultra 4 racing, if they see you finish races and actually be successful, actually see a few podium finishes, then it adds credibility to the product. So although there's no money in racing, as far as product development goes, there's a huge benefit in the credibility it lends to your product. Customers, and not just with off-road products, but with anything, when they see professionals using a product and being happy with it, then they say, well, if a professional is good with it, then it's got to be good for me too.
Right. And that's one of the things that we learned a long time ago with the rock crawling is that the enthusiast, maybe they didn't want to go out and compete, but they wanted their rigs, their trail rigs, to look like, act like, and perform like the competition rigs.
Exactly. And so, the thing, I had the engineering side and I had the quality side of the business down pat. My wife helped us with the business and the books, but the marketing side is something we were lacking. How do you promote a product? And racing does it. Word of mouth is a great thing. We never advertised, but word of mouth helped us. But I think one of the things that's helped us most is been able to post on Facebook and on our website. These things are being raced and they're actually succeeding. Our customers see that. They see all these sponsors on the stickers on the sides of cars. Well, I want to have that on my car, the recreationalists, or as you say, the enthusiasts. And, I do the same thing for my own, for myself. I want to use and buy products that are endorsed by big name professionals.
Right. As the tire companies used to say, especially with NASCAR, you win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
There you go. Yes. So that's an aspect of the business I had to learn the hard way. My one of my sons, Russell, was involved he was a marketing director for KSL for a number of years. He's now going full time in his business, but he's the one that talked me to going into Facebook. And Facebook, what's that? That's another one. Okay, I had no idea what rock crawling was. I didn't know what a KOH was. And so now years ago, he was throwing this new concept at me, Facebook. And I said, Facebook? This is a business. I don't want to be involved with social media and all that. And he convinced me, you have to be on Facebook if your business is going to succeed. So he set that up. And then there's this other thing that came along, Instagram. You have to be on Instagram. I'm sure you're involved in all that too. I don't know if reluctantly like me, but uh, we're in deep and there's no getting around it.
No, I grasped it early. Again, it was my son that said the same thing. You know, he was like, "Hey, we're going to make this work. You know, we've got to, you know, especially after Pirate, um, you know, the bulletin boards, especially Pirate, was great in the early days, but Facebook, with their algorithms and the reach that they had, um, was so much greater than Pirate. I mean, Pirate, you got just to the 4-wheel drive industry. Um, with Facebook, you got to people that might be motorheads that would be interested in our sport, and so we were able to grab a lot more people from Facebook. So social media, you know, was one of those things that I jumped on board pretty early with. Not as
Yes,
early
and
as
when I
some,
say
but early enough.
yeah, and so I can't say that we don't advertise because if you have a Facebook page, you're advertising.
True.
And my son that I was talking about, talking me into Facebook, he's a search engine optimizer professionally, SEO. So you start combining. So having 7 kids is a big advantage because each one has a different expertise.
Right.
Kirk, our tech support guy, is a graduate from automotive technology at the university. And Russell is a professional SEO. So put all that together. You have to have kids. So you rock crawlers out there that don't think having a family is important, you have to have kids because, well, for one thing, they're going to take over your business one day and they need to know how to do it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so we reluctantly got into the social media scene. And but it's worked out for us quite well.
Excellent. And what do you see for the future?
Oh, for the future, I'd like to someday retire and just do this as a sport.
Right.
You know, I think it's a great thing that your hobby and your passion becomes your bread and butter, or your business one day. But the downside to that is you spend so much time on this business side of it that you forget about the hobby and the recreational side of it.
Exactly.
So I'd like to hand off a lot of the responsibility to our kids and to other hires. My son-in-law is operating the factory in Georgia. I'm living in Utah now with my wife. We came out here to expand the business. We bought 9 acres of property here in Toelle, subdivided it into 5 lots, and rezoned it to commercial and industrial. So one of those lots we're keeping for ourselves to expand the operation that is in Georgia to here, when we'll manufacture other products here in Utah. So you ask about our future. Yes, I retired in 2015, but I'm far from it.
Right.
We're still very, very actively involved in it. Sudden inflation really took a bite out of our plans. In 2020, we just got hit with a huge spike in inflation. COVID took a hit. We lost more than half of our crew with COVID. We're still trying to hire these people back, or new employees. A good number of our employees, when we were hit with the lockdown and shelter in place mandate as a manufacturing facility, we were severely hampered to what we could do. We could maintain our inventory, and that was all. Everybody else had to shelter in place. Several of our employees approached us and said, "We want to go home. We don't and want to expose ourselves to COVID." So more than half of our people were gone. Still trying to hire and replenish that crew. We are in the active hiring, and it's helping. We bought some new equipment, trying to keep up with orders. And that was really, really tough during COVID because, like I said earlier, orders didn't slow down, but we lost half of our people, more than half of our people, and trying to maintain that. And then with this massive inflation that hit starting in 2020, we could not keep our employees because now they're demanding much higher wages to deal with the inflation. So that's also keeping the size of our crew down. We gave at least 20% increases in pay across the board to most of our employees. It's hard to have the number of people that we need when we have to pay them incredible wages.
Right, without making your product so
Well,
expensive that people aren't going to buy it.
We couldn't raise the price of our product. It's already expensive. It's
Right.
complicated. The struts that we make are very complicated. Like you said, they're outside the box. They're not a typical shock design. We don't make anything in China. There's one part that we buy from China that goes on our dual fuel kit that we're going to be out sourcing from somewhere else here very soon. And that's the only thing we get from China, but nothing in the strut comes from outside the U.S.
I think that's important, and I think there's a
I
lot
do.
of people that are like-minded as well. That manufactured, not just assembled in the U.S.
Well, you look at most of the things you're finding online right now, even in the off-road world. A good share of it is manufactured in China. I guess I'm one of the old holdouts. We're still holding out. We're building everything. The materials, we buy all the raw materials. Everything comes from the U.S. for the struts. And it's just something I've stuck with from the very beginning. I want to keep it that way. It won't make us competitive. We've had people in Malaysia copy our struts. They never did get it launched well. It wasn't not a success. And that's where customer loyalty, I think, has helped save our company. A lot of our customers refuse to buy a counterfeit. So that's helped us. And so I don't think you can today find the counterfeits here because it just didn't take off. And I think because of loyalty to the American brand. Not to mention the fact that when I looked at the parts that the counterfeits were using, I looked at my sons and I said, those struts are going to overheat and the seals are going to fail. I could tell just by looking at pictures of the parts that they did not learn from reverse engineering our product.
Right. All
So
they didn't use the right materials. Correct. Yep.
So we keep a lot of our processes close and quiet, secret. Like I said, the seal material, the oils, and the processes that we use, we just keep that proprietary. There's only so much that they can reverse engineer, and they couldn't copy it completely, and their struts will overheat. And there's nothing they can do to avoid it, and we know that. So
Well,
we stay close to the American brand.
Perfect. Excellent.
So we're pretty happy with that. Yeah, the business overall, I think, has been a great success for us. I've had a number of my friends that started businesses and abandoned the idea and went back to punching the time clock. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to belittle those who work a career and save up and retire and have a happy life. There are those of us who just have to have our own business and do it our own way. Marie and I put this together. We persevered with it. We took what was to be our retirement, our 401k, our IRA. We cashed all that out and build a business with it. That's a huge risk. And as you know, the statistics, I think 90 to 95% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years.
Yep.
If you can make it past that, you're doing great. So when you're raising a family, there's just incredible risk to starting a business and quitting your day job, hoping that your business will go. Like I say, 90 to 95% of people just don't make it, and they have to go back to working for someone.
And some of us are not good employees for other people.
I would like to think I was a good employee, but I see your point. I'll just keep some of those days quiet.
Yeah, I would never worked for whether it was another business of my own or another business for more than 5 years.
Okay, Rich, I'm going to share something with you.
Okay.
I don't know how much time we have here.
We have
but,
as much time as we want to take.
You're going to edit anyway. No, you haven't had to bleep out anything I said. I'm careful.
No,
So
I never said that this was a family friendly podcast. Sometimes it's not.
But when I started working at Yokogawa as an engineer, like I said, I was recruited by a headhunter out of Utah, moved to Georgia. Our parents were very upset with us for us moving the grandkids away from them, 2,000 miles away. I started working at Yokogawa. We had machine shop supervisor at the time. And this goes back to your point about we're not always doing things the way we're told to do, or not always making friends by being independent thinkers and wanting to be out on our own. Well, I had that independent thought process and maybe a little bit of pride once again. We had one of the shop supervisors in the machine shop, they had a problem with the vortex flow meter, the half-inch meter. This is based on pipe size. A half-inch flow meter was not working. Had a lot of problems with it. So they called on me to research and find out what was wrong with it. Machine shop was blaming the assembly department, and the assembly department was blaming the machine shop for bad parts. So I started digging into it, and I could see where there were some actual design issues with the Japanese design that I had to correct with the headquarters in Tokyo. And then I could see problems with the machining that they weren't taking care of. Machine shop supervisor, I told him, we need to do this. We need to use this type of tooling to ensure more accuracy in this flow meter. And the supervisor said to me, well, Mark, we've been doing it this way for years and it's been just fine. And I said to him, Mike, you've been doing it wrong all those years. We need to change. So I didn't make a friend that day.
Yeah, sometimes being honest is not always comforting to the person you're being honest to.
So, man, we don't always make friends.
Correct.
But anyway, that got past that, and I did manage to resolve the problems with a half-inch flow meter, and we got it working. So I think it helped where I was able to point to problems in assembly, problems in machining, and problems in the design. So, but his reluctance to change, that's human nature. We've been doing it this way for several years. It's always been okay for us. Well, you've been doing it wrong for several years. And that was not a tactful response, I'm sure. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
You take the good with the bad.
Exactly.
But as far as our future, we plan to expand. ORI struts are not going away. They're
Good.
only getting improved. Like I said, I'm looking at the Generation 3, the Gen 3 model reservoir strut here, heading out to Georgia this afternoon. And we're going to stick that on our race car and see if we can make this thing perform better in the whoops. That's another word I had to learn. What's a whoop? So being isolated from the off-road world for several years, I had to learn a lot of new acronyms and new terminology. So whoops, and the packing, that's another word I had to learn. But it's a learning process. Even though I was an engineer, I didn't know what I needed to know. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Exactly.
And until I experienced it myself, I couldn't fix these things with my own product. So we're there. I think we're doing very, very good now. We have a lot of podium finishes. Marty Emerson has been winning a lot of the tough truck competitions back east. Kevin Taylor, we sponsor him. He's also Ultra 4 Unlimited class. He's getting a lot of podium finishes now, some first place. Nick Reich and Jake Pike are doing a lot of the rock bouncer with SRS. And they're getting a lot of podium finishes on the struts, and they're loyal customers. So all those failures from the years past are starting to pay off. We've learned a lot. If we had given up, this product would have faded away, our business would have faded away, and I would have gone back to punching the time clock. There's no shame in that. But, life is a learning experience. I'm just glad we were able to pull it off.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue. Mark, thank you so much for spending the time this morning and having this conversation with me about your life and family and product and your adventures in manufacturing and being a business owner and now a racer.
You know, that's on my bucket list. I need to drive one of the races. It's not too late to start at 70 years old.
No, not at all.
No?
Nope.
Okay. Walter Evans, I think, raced until he was 74.
Absolutely. And he's got a storied career.
And I'll give it a try.
There you go. Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Rich, for taking the time with us this morning. And Marie, you need to say hi.
Hello, Marie.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't know how she's patiently stayed quiet all this time. She's been writing little crib notes to me on the side here. You need to talk about this. You need to talk about this. So she's
Perfect.
been quiet in the background, but she's here.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Marie.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you again.
Okay, you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.